Okay, so imagine this. You and your college buddy start a band for fun, no real plans, and then boom, you're suddenly a global phenomenon. But what if you then decide you don't actually want any of it? Well, that is the absolutely wild and unpredictable story of MGMT, and we're going to break down just how they navigated that bizarre path. Yeah, it's a story that basically starts with zero ambition, skyrockets to superstardom, and then just takes this hard left turn into the unknown. So the real question we're digging into here is this. How in the world did two friends accidentally create the soundtrack for a generation and then spend the next 10 years trying to escape it? Just look at this. This is the kind of fame we're talking about, right? Absolutely massive festival crowds, global recognition, the whole shebang. But to really get a handle on the MGMT story, we've got to go all the way back. Back before any of this. Back to a dorm room where they were just two friends messing around with some synths. Yep, it all started at Wesleyan University. And let me be clear, this was not some calculated career move. No, it was pretty much the exact opposite. I mean, the contrast here is just wild, isn't it? On the one hand, you've got Ben Goldwasser and Andrew VanWyngarden in 2005 looking like any other college students you'd see on campus. And then, poof, just 3 years later, they are full-blown world-touring rock stars. The transformation was just dizzyingly fast. And you don't have to take my word for it. Ben Goldwasser said it himself. We weren't trying to start a band. We were just hanging out and showing each other music that we liked. That says it all, right? There was absolutely no grand plan here. It was just two buddies having fun, experimenting, with seriously no idea what was about to happen. So at first, they actually called themselves The Management. And their early sound, oh man, it was all over the map. We're talking everything from noise rock to, straight up electronica. It was really only by messing around with all that stuff that they eventually stumbled upon that super unique psychedelic pop sound that, well, would make them famous. And once they locked into that sound, ooh boy, the world took notice in a huge way. This right here is where the rocket ship really ignites. Okay, let's process this timeline for a second, because it's insane. So 2006, they get a call from Columbia Records, a major label, and they literally think it's a prank call. Just 1 year later, they drop Oracular Spectacular. By 2008, they're on tour with Radiohead, and by 2009, they're opening for Paul McCartney, a Beatle. I mean, seriously, it just does not get bigger or faster than that. And the praise from critics, it was just as intense. Suddenly, they were absolutely everywhere. Spin called them the artist of the day. Rolling Stone put them in their top 10 artists to watch. The BBC was talking about them. They were the most played new artist on Last FM. Oh, and their debut album? Yeah, it just landed on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. So you can imagine the expectations for what they would do next were just astronomical. 3, that's the number of early Grammy recognitions that cemented their place at the top. We're talking a win for that amazing Justice remix of Electric Feel, plus nominations for Best New Artist and, of course, for their massive hit Kids. I mean, they were officially music royalty at this point. But what they decided to do with all that power, with all that momentum, well, it surprised absolutely everyone. All right, so let's get into this psychedelic pivot. This was a totally deliberate swerve away from the mainstream, and honestly, it became one of the most fascinating U-turns in modern music. So their follow-up album in 2010, Congratulations, was basically an act of commercial rebellion. They took all those catchy synth-pop anthems that made them famous and traded them in for something way more complex, way more challenging. They even threw out the idea of not releasing any singles from it. Think about that. For a band at the peak of their fame, it's almost unheard of. And you can see the difference right here. It couldn't be clearer. After Oracular Spectacular, the world expected more synth-pop hits, huge global tours, more Grammy nods. But the reality they delivered with Congratulations? A dense, experimental rock album that seemed designed to challenge their fans. They were, in real time, actively retreating from the pop machine. And you know what? They didn't stop there. They doubled down with their third self-titled album in 2013, which was somehow even more experimental. But here's the crucial thing. They knew exactly what they were doing. They even admitted later that these two albums were, and I'm quoting here, so poorly received. But this whole period is what really defined them. It proved they weren't pop stars. They were artists, totally committed to their own weird vision, no matter what it cost them commercially. So after basically alienating a huge chunk of their mainstream audience, the band took a much-needed break. But what happened next was, well, it was a really surprising and powerful comeback, born from a completely different set of circumstances. Yeah, after that self-titled album, the two of them, the core duo, they took some time apart to do their own thing. But eventually, they started working together again. But this time it was all long distance, just shooting ideas back and forth over email. And that whole process is what led to their incredible fourth album, Little Dark Age. So a few key things really shaped this record. First was just their general dismay over the political and social climate at the time. Second was that whole creative process of working long distance. And third, and this is a big one, was a real reconnection of their friendship, which they even wrote about in the song James. So in a weird way, it was kind of like a return to their roots, just two friends making music together again, but this time with a lot more life experience under their belts. And Andrew VanWyngarden had this amazing quote that just summed it all up perfectly. He said, "Apparently, we were more inspired to write pop music after evil took over the world." Isn't that fascinating? In this wild twist, all the political turmoil actually pushed them back toward the catchy pop music they'd run away from years before. It's just a perfect example of their completely unpredictable and often contrary way of thinking. So when they released Little Dark Age, that actually fulfilled their contract with Columbia Records. And in a move that should surprise no one at this point, they did not re-sign with a big label. Instead, they started their own record label, MGMT Records. For the first time since they were in that dorm room, they had complete and total creative freedom. So when you step back and look at their whole career, what's the big takeaway? Really, it's a masterclass in one thing: putting your art, your artistic integrity, above literally everything else. Someone once described their sound as a brand of shape-shifting psychedelic pop, and that nails it, doesn't it? They've mixed together so many different styles, synth pop, indie rock, straight-up neo-psychedelia, that they've kind of created their own little genre. You never really know what's coming next, but you always know it's gonna sound like MGMT. And through it all, touring members have come and gone over the years, but the creative engine of the band, the heart of it, has always, always been the same. That partnership between Andrew VanWyngarden and Ben Goldwasser. And all of this leaves us with one last question to think about. Look, MGMT could have been one of the biggest pop bands on the planet, hands down. They chose a totally different path. And their journey really makes you wonder, right? What does success really mean? Is it about the charts, the sales, the fame? Or is staying true to your art the ultimate prize?